everyone. Good morning. So happy to see all of you here early. Thank you so much for those who came on time. We are about to start. Apologies for the late start. So I would like to welcome all of you to this edition of the Leader Without Title series. So at CVL, we pride ourselves on being punctual. So again, we apologize for the tardy beginning. So in this particular edition, we are here to honor a man who has done a lot, expanded from his original start in accounting to be an entrepreneur in multiple fields of expertise. We are here to honor Chief Christopher IKECHI, EZEH, MFR. Welcome, sir. Okay. I would like to welcome the Executive Director, Shared Services and Products at Fidelity Bank, Mrs. Chijioke Ugochukwu. Also on the panel is Mr. Basharun J.K. Randall, FCA. He is currently on his way, so he'll be here and will join us on the stage shortly. And finally, I would like to welcome the founder of the Center for Values in Leadership, Professor Pat Lutomi. Of course, our celebrants, I would like to invite you to the stage. Please welcome, with a round of applause, Chief Christopher IKECHI EZEH. All right, we'll have a brief video introduction of the celebrant. Chief EZEH was born in Omoku, Rivers State on the 2nd of February 1943, a native of Iboku in Aguota, LGA of Anambra State. He attended St. Mary's Primary School, Omoku, from 1950 to 1955, and St. Paul's Primary School, Ahoada, 1956. He thereafter proceeded to the Otukoku College of Commerce, Onitsha, 1957 to 1961. The young EZEH began his career with Shell BP, Port Harcourt, from 1962 to 1967 as an internal audit clerk. But his thirst for knowledge and excellence saw him travel to the United Kingdom for further studies at the Wednesday College of Commerce in Wood Green, Wednesbury, Staffordshire in 1967. On completion of his studies, after winning the S. Lawrence Gill Prize for the Best Student in the Part 5 final exams of the Institute of Chartered and Management Accountants, he continued his career with Chrysler Motors UK Limited as Accounting Audit Supervisor, Shell Zambia Limited, Lusaka, 1971 to 1972, as Senior Internal Auditor, Indeco Limited Group, Zambia, also as Senior Internal Auditor, 1972 to 1973, and in Deni Petroleum Refining Company, Ndola, Zambia, as Chief Accountant from 1973 to 1976. He returned to Nigeria in 1976 and joined John Holt Limited, now PLC, as Senior Accountant. He married Rose Ijoma Onwuzu in 1972 and is blessed with 3 sons and 1 daughter. Ladies and gentlemen, with a standing ovation, please welcome Dr. Christopher EZEH. Thank you for that great introduction. So just before the opening remarks, we'd just like to recognize a couple of special guests. We'd like to recognize Admiral Alison Madueke, Dr. Christopher EZEH, Group Managing Director of John Holt, Mr. Edeche Okoje, Finance Director, Mr. Chris Wachuku, Senior Executive, Mrs. Ada Kwocha, Company Secretary, Professor F.N. Dubuisi, BC of Christopher University, Mr. Aloysius Udeoke, Registrar, Christopher University, Dr. Nicholas Idoko, Dean, School of Social Sciences, Christopher University, and the Anambra State Women Association, Lagos. Thank you for coming. So I will now hand over to the moderator of this panel, Professor Pat Utomi. We'd also like to recognize Chief Chamberlain Oyibo. Thank you so much for coming, sir.
Honoree Chief Dr. Christopher EZEH Wumba. It is a great personal privilege for me to welcome people to this 48th in the series of the Leader Without Tribute Colloquium series. And my task at this stage is to give people insight into why we have this series. There are two principal reasons why we have this series. One is aimed at the future. The other is about acknowledging the past. It is aimed at the future because as a country we are deeply, deeply challenged. We're challenged because there are many who look and see a troubling future. And this troubling future comes essentially because our country has experienced the collapse of culture. There is a crisis of values in our society, and values shape human progress. It does not matter what it looks like on the face of it. No society that's lacking in the values that make for human progress achieves its dream. That is the truth that history presents to us clearly and abundantly. And anybody who is honest with himself will have to acknowledge that somewhere along the line, Nigeria has suffered a collapse of culture. And so we use this tribute colloquium series to enable people who have had impact with their lives to transmit culture to another generation. We do this particularly bearing in mind that there is a tendency in contemporary Nigerian culture of instant gratification to focus obsessively on this material moment. And so many people who have had impact with their lives, who may not have had a huge title, I mean, even those who have had big titles are forgotten. I talk of those who may not have had big titles. And yet we realize that what has made a difference in most societies is the way that people, in spite of titles, have contributed to nation building. A few years ago, a remarkable Canadian visited Lagos and gave a talk at Muson. I was part of encouraging the process that led to his being invited to speak here. His name is Robin Sharma. And Robin Sharma wrote a remarkable book titled The Leader Who Had No Title. Some of the most impact in society come from people who do not necessarily wave a big title of president, governor, and the kinds of things that tend to build in our culture. And so we thought it was important for a generation to recognize that impact comes from values and comes in spite of title. Yes, if you have a title and you make a difference, fantastic. But you can make a huge impact without having a title. And so years ago, we began to identify Nigerians who were 70 years old and above, whose time was a time of impact, and whose values are values we can show to the next generation, and they can learn something from. Incidentally, we are at a very interesting juncture in the evolution of this series, because in the last few weeks, I have actually been approached by a number of the honorees, principal amongst them, Chief Mrs. Francesca Emmanuel, who I believe was the first female federal permanent secretary, and Chief Fred Agbaigbe, who we know for his activism, for his contribution to theater, but is principally a lawyer. And both have raised a specific question of what kind of events can be structured to facilitate this values transmission, that their generation is scared that they are about to go and that Nigeria may not be what they dreamt it would be. And we're working on a series of ideas about how to make this process more of a continuing one beyond such an event as we're having today. So this event enables us to identify to that generation people whose lives are worthy of emulation because of the impact that they have had in spite of title. And it enables us to also say thank you to those people for living lives of example. At these events, I often recognize the honorees who are around. Right away, I see Chief Chamberlain Oyibo, who is here. I'm sure a few others will probably join us. But this really is important, especially because if you look at our national honor system, it has not often honored people who are worthy or deserving. And it is important for people to recognize that what matters in living is the impact of your life. And so I'm very, very pleased to be here today to say to all of us, to say to the next generation, here is a man who has worked very gently and made significant impact. The second part of why we do this is that one of the challenges of Nigerian society is the quality of public conversation. And our country suffers so much because we do not have enough of intelligent conversation. We get all these abuses and insults on Facebook and Twitter and other social media. But society is elevated by the quality of public conversation, which then gets converted into the choices we make as a society that then lead to sustained progress. Each honoree provides us an opportunity to look into the path that they've trod and to take from that path some issue of worthy public engagement and have a panel of a nature that we have put together today engage in the conversation around that issue for the purpose of thought leadership, of building up thought in our society that can lead to better choices and a better governed society. Today's honoree provides us a very special opportunity in terms of both one of my passions and what really is challenge within us as a country. In 1996, I was at a summit in France. The title of that summit, at which there were several African heads of state, was called by former French Prime Minister Raymond Barre. The theme of that summit was simple: Africa must produce or die. Africa must produce or die, or perish, whichever it is you choose. If there's any problem in Nigeria, is that we are not producing. And if we're going to produce, we need entrepreneurs. Chibeze has managed to be an entrepreneur in several areas that are critical for growth and development. but he also happens to be that peculiar breed called the accountant. Now, uh, as a business teacher, I know that there are all kinds of nice things and terrible things said about accountants, including that they are bean counters and stuff like that. How does a bean counter become a visionary opportunity seeker? And that's a very interesting juxtaposition that I hope we'll engage in the conversations of today. And I thank you for coming to join us in what will be a very interesting morning. Thank you. Welcome. So our next item on the agenda here, if the team is ready, um, is to go into the colloquium. And I would like to put somebody on the spot. I mean, the person will not be expecting to be put on the spot, but that person will lead off. The person has merited being the one that leads off because this person has learned plenty through the years directly from the honoree and has suffered under the teaching of some people and definitely possesses the tools for engagement on this subject matter. Just before we started, a journalist asked me outside and said, the problem with venturing in Nigeria is that financing is not available to entrepreneurs. And I offered that person the Harvard Business School definition of entrepreneurship, which is producing value, significant value, quantum leap in value without the resources ordinarily required to so do. So, of necessity, if you have the resources, if you have all the money to play with, you're not an entrepreneur. It's about resource scarcity and then using imagination to overcome that resource scarcity to create value where none existed. Sitting right next to my left, I'm sure she was expecting it, is somebody who sat in a class for many years at the Lagos Business School and so obviously has a duty to spread the gospel that has come from there. Has worked in a bank and therefore has been witness to whether or not resources are made available to entrepreneurs. Has worked closely with the honoree in her role in that bank where he was chair of the board for quite a number of years, during which they accomplished quite a bit. So Chijoke, why do we not have enough venturing? Before we get to the accountants and the problem of accountants and venturing.
Good morning, still morning. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. And it's a great honor and privilege to be sitting on this side for a change. I thank especially Chief EZEH Ugumba and my lecturer, Professor Tomi, for this honor. This is something on a personal level that I wouldn't have missed for the world for so many reasons. Not just personal, but I identify with what the CVL is trying to do through this medium and through other events and training and capacity building programs that it organizes. To go directly to the question, and which is the availability, the adequacy of financing for venturing. I'm very happy to be giving this question at a time when seated in the front row this morning is one of the path makers of financing for entrepreneurs and new ventures, and especially the small and medium and large enterprises in Nigeria. And sir, please permit me to embarrass you ever so slightly. As I say that, wherever I stop, maybe we'll break a bit of protocol and say that there's someone here most eminently qualified to speak about financing for ventures in Nigeria. I think it's more appropriate to speak in terms of the progress that has been made at all levels through various channels towards the provision of financing for venturing in Nigeria. Indeed, from where we sit in the financial institution, the issue is more about readiness. The ventures, the entrepreneurs readying themselves for funding and support. It's more about that than the unavailability of financing. We don't celebrate enough, but this is an opportunity for us to say some of the good things that have happened in this economy in the past 2 decades. And part of that is that the Nigerian banking system has been blessed with very vibrant and well-funded development finance institutions that can stand and rival that which is available in any first world economy. Funding is well provided by the government, but a bigger question and a more oftenly arising issue is the readiness for funding. And by this, what do we mean? A gentleman comes to the bank with a most brilliant idea. He's so excited about it, he's so passionate about it, but he has not been able to communicate himself in writing. He does not have a profile, he does not have a record of his business, does not have a history, does not have, with all possible due respect, he does not have the brand that will encourage any lender to put money behind him or her. So what you find a lot of financiers across board, both from government to the private sector doing, is putting a lot of resources first into getting venturers ready for funding, because there is research around this. Providing money to someone who is not ready is worse than the person not having money at all. And as we all know, bad loans, bad cases, they block the path for those who are more deserving of these monies. So in a nutshell, I'd like to set off the discussion today by highlighting the fact that there is available funding, more than I have seen in this industry in the last few decades, but we have some more work to do in terms of being sure that we can get what is due to us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We're obviously going to come back to you going down this track, but it's important to lay down. She was talking about Dr. Waheed Olagunju. Waheed, welcome. Waheed has been identified with this effort, and I told him earlier that he's going to have to make a contribution as we go along on this path of conversation. It is important to recognize that there's always been more money available to support venturing than there have been takers. But sometimes there are challenges in the system that prevent the potential takers from getting to this. Now, we have with us a younger generation entrepreneur who has been helping build other entrepreneurs in terms of their capacity for venturing, but he has experience himself, and it will be good to get a sense from him why we keep talking about people can't access resources for venturing, yet there is a lot of money available. I mean, a couple of years ago, when we having this conversation, the IFC made the point that it has $2 billion waiting to give any venturers in Africa, and nobody's taking. What are the impediments? And there are real impediments. We shouldn't make any light of it. Real impediments to why people who want to venture are not getting to the money. Ubong, Mr. Ubong Essien, maybe Ubong can give us a perspective from your.
Thank you very much. Chief Eze, congratulations, sir. I also want to, in more ways, reflect a bit more vicariously on this issue. I run a business teaching people how to speak in public. And while I agree with the perspective of my fellow panelists here, thank you very much, Ma, for that there has always been more funding available than accessed. I believe from experience that something is still missing. And that responsibility of fixing what is still missing should still rest with the institutions who have the resources. And here is my reason. Because our culture and the level of education and appreciation of these values isn't as sophisticated as what you have out there. Like in the US, you have the Small Business Administration. They do so much more than what we are currently getting from Sweden. When you go to their website alone and just compare, do a comparative analysis, and you will discover that they are much more, they show so much more initiative in terms of engagement, such that you really have no excuse than to make yourself available. Just getting on their website alone, you can do so much to get your business ready to access the funding, which is what she talked about. But we don't yet have that in Nigeria. So the funds are there, and that's where the frustration lies. That so many young people who need this financial support continue to feel a bit more alienated. So we can watch BOI in action, see on Channels Television, and we see that BOI has given some companies loans in excess of 200, 300, 500 million naira for the third, fourth, fifth time. And there are those, as C.K. Prahalad would say, at the bottom of that pyramid, who are yet to access 10 million. So something is missing. And so my view is that there has to be a bit more aggressiveness in the approach of institutions such as the BOI and a host of others in bringing more entrepreneurs into the accessibility net, just like we do with taxes. Now, I have built my own business by being creative in terms of funding. First, building goodwill and leveraging on that goodwill to raise the necessary funds to do most of what we have been able to do. Because each time I look at my own business model, a couple of times I've had to reach out to make some inquiries. One of the things I've gotten from people I've reached out to the BOI is that, look, you're not producing, you're not manufacturing. So your business model may not make an exciting fit. So that has just ticked me off. So there has got to be more done to encourage and make life a lot easier in order to access.
Is that more done entrepreneurial opportunity? It would be opportunity for people to prepare people to go in. And because that opportunity, I'll tell a short story about the Lagos Business School and this. I mean, the very early days of Lagos Business School, the strategy was general management education. And I argued with my colleagues that, we have to grow an economy. Just producing executives, managers for multinationals will not grow this country's economy. And that argument went on until, remarkably, in March of 1996, I went to visit at Wharton to meet the dean. And I kind of asked him if they did anything for small entrepreneurs. And he says, we have a center, the C. Snyder Center for Entrepreneurship, that tries to help small business people. And we went out there, and he said, by the way, the director is an African. So a guy called Ian Macmillan. We called him and went to go and see him. Turns out they have in the center cubicles where small business people from Philadelphia come in and they get counsel, get prepared in some ways. When I came back, I put pressure on my colleagues that we had to do something. Today, the outcome is the EDC, which has been doing quite a bit. So the question is, all these challenges we have are also entrepreneurial opportunities. One of the biggest challenges in all is how to prepare young entrepreneurs for how to keep a certain discipline with their books, with all kinds of things. And this is where accountants tend to come in. Mr. Gwadai, what do you think? Accountants doing enough to make us an entrepreneurship ready environment?
Good morning, all. Thank you, Pat, and congratulations, my elder and senior colleague. Well, this is a quite interesting topic and something that is dear to my heart too, because I have passed through some series of training when I was younger, when I was training in the audit firm. I happen to have been a part of the team that audited um, uh, the Bank for Commerce and Industry, yes, LBCI, and I saw firsthand. I was really happy when I looked through the credit system and I saw a lot of proposals that were prepared and submitted by individuals and some small companies for funding. But I was also surprised because I had to go to as far as Bauchi and Ilorin to review some of those who had been given credit to establish factories. One of them was in Bauchi, and it was a furniture factory. It's an eye opener when you sit on a comfortable chair and you see how it's made. But at the end of the day, it was run down. I went to Ilorin and I saw a well equipped factory that was to produce brick, red bricks for construction. It had all manners of equipment that the bank had provided, the credit had provided, and they were just lying fallow because that facility was given to a very top individual that was not going to do anything about it. He had the influence, he got the money, all the things were installed, and the factory, there was nobody there. There were no employees to run it. I also had somebody Pat just mentioned, I won't mention his name again, but under the, I think, Federal Savings Bank of those days, the Operation Feed the Nation, they were giving 48,000 naira to buy is it a trawler? Fishing trawler. 48,000 naira. That was what it cost. And he had two. And they were not working. So what happened was, I happened to be a friend of the younger cousin of this senior person. And we were just leaving the practice, and we said we wanted to venture into something rather than going to work for somebody. And as a first step, I went into Texaco while he was out there. And we went to the jetty at somewhere in Apapa or thereabout. And those vessels were lying down fine. And we asked why. And they said they are not functioning. So we got some people together, got one of the vessels. And it was very interesting for me because I loved the adventure. We went into the sea. And we were able to harvest some fish. But the refrigeration was bad. And nobody knew what was the problem. We looked at the engine, and I think the supplier was UTC. So we said, why don't we drive to UTC in Akbongbon then? And we went to speak with the people, and they came, and all it needed was just to service it and put the proper gas and all that. And these vessels could now go out for like 4 weeks and come back with haul of fishes. And then we now sold, and we were just we were on top of the world. But you know what happened? After a few trips, suddenly uh, the uh, the officials came and impounded the vessel because the loan was not being paid, and it was so painful for us that we could have, revived that business and paid off that loan, which was so ridiculously small. So, what am I saying here is that there are a lot of these opportunities out there. There are a lot of money out there, but we are not willing to even take the services of a professional. In the UK, there are some businesses that are not required to do audit, statutory audit within a benchmark. But what happens is that those businesses to survive must keep records. You don't have to be forced to do it. In Nigeria, what you have today is an accountant goes out there and wants to advise you. You say, no, no, no. What I just need is for tax purpose. Just configure the figure for me, and how much is it? I'm doing this only because of tax. But you are not keeping record of your assets, liabilities, income, and expenses, and then you take the money,
which is valuable intelligence for you
yes,
to use to make the next
yes,
decision.
and the accountant is so trained. I take my elder here, who passed through the mill. He trained, and he went into commerce. Ended up being chief accountant even in a refinery and several businesses. Imagine the type of knowledge of operations that he would have had. And so, is it surprising that he ended up being the MD of John Holtz? No, because when you have passed through all of this, you have a reciprocity of knowledge and experience to be able to guide. But we do not value professionals. And accountants are there, trained, prepared, and willing to provide all these necessary things about keeping your records that will enable you access the funds, enable you keep your business going, in spite of even the infrastructural problem that we have.
Thank you so much. I think it's an appropriate moment to welcome Bashorun J.K. Randall. He is the godfather who never sleeps. But you should hear this story of my father's experience. Many years ago, we were talking about refineries. My father, what do you call this, tank farm, was managing one in the north in the 60s. And he had this gate man. Every time he comes, the gate man is sleeping. He goes, the gate man says, I'm not sleeping. So one day my father crept up, took his double barrel, came out, and he said, that is the godfather. You never sleep. But we have a problem we have to sort out now. We'll ask Mr. Demola to begin to sort it out before you join in the sorting out. The point has just been made. Most entrepreneurs in Nigeria think of the service of a professional as something they get just to make up the requirements, or something they get when they've made plenty of money. You teach a young American and he's starting out, the first thing he thinks about is how much is he going to commit to marketing, because he knows marketing will expand his possibilities. Marketing professionals, how can he use them to get the most from that? But you get a Nigerian venturing out, and that is considered in their makeup mindset as waste, something that they will get to when they become big enough. Now, Mr. Demola provides us a great opportunity of somebody who has been private, public, seen the terrain, the environment. And I wonder, in her experience, one, why she thinks that entrepreneurs don't do enough to use the services of professionals so that they can get more bang for the buck. And two, how entrepreneurs, because of our government experience, can deal with, in my view, the biggest risk in doing business in Nigeria, which is regulatory risk. Government is the biggest threat to business in Nigeria. Regulators do. If you are going into a regulated sector, your biggest danger is the possibility of the regulator's action. The personal bias I've seen in many sectors. How does an entrepreneur get trained to engage these two principal issues? The value of the professional and seeking it, and how to manage a regulator, because if you give a person a uniform in Nigeria, make him a bully. The government is terrorizing you from any direction.
Thank you very much, Professor. I recall your very interesting lectures in my MBA days at the LBS. God bless you. And congratulations, sir. It's a pleasure to be seated near you and to speak. First of all, what I would call in inverted commas, the disdain for professionals. And I would use the accountant as an example. Even the dictionary disdains accountants. You know, if you look at the dictionary definition of accountant, checking our books, keeping records, auditing, ABBA. The latest dictionaries, it has updated itself. It includes selfie. It includes Twitter. Chairman has become chairperson. Why have they not updated the definition of an accountant? You know, so you find that one of the problems is that accountants have been boxed. We have been boxed, and many of us, we prefer to remain in that box. We've been boxed within that definition. We forget that, you know, we've been programmed in our training. Our senses are so sharpened. We can smell an opportunity a mile off. We can see the window of chance. We are trained to be prudent. One of the first things we are taught is that time is money. And so we know how to manage time. But what do? We allow ourselves. So the accountant himself must be confident, must develop himself. I remember when I was in government and I wanted to go to Lagos Business School. And they were saying, it's not relevant to my function as an accountant to do an MBA. I said, what? I had allowed myself to be boxed. I wouldn't have got to the peak of my career. Gone were the days, years ago, who would have imagined that an accountant could be head of service? Who could imagine? Who could imagine that an accountant could be governor? Who could imagine? So we accountants, we must go and develop ourselves. We must be ready. We must be aggressive. Aggressive to be reckoned with. People will listen to us so that when you are in that organization, even if you are there as a, chief accountant, I don't know if that designation is, but I hate to imagine that chief accountant still exists. So even if you are being referred to as chief accountant, or the glorified name that Otumba is calling it, CFO, chief financial officer, you know that you have a lot to offer and they will listen. Let's go to LBS. Let's sit at home and read. Let's go online. Let's be ready so that we can walk up to the MD and say, or to the professional who has employed us the entrepreneur who has employed us to keep his books, and say, beyond the bookkeeping, don't worry, it's not about the money. Beyond the bookkeeping, this is what I think. Don't you think you should set aside a bit for this? Don't you? There's so many things we can do. I recall that when I was in government, I made sure I attended all management meetings. It wasn't just about money. And then I was a director, and the permanent secretary used to tell me, Madam, you're only here to count money. Why are you correcting our grammar? Why are you this? Why are you that? We must be everywhere. We must be everywhere, gaining that knowledge so that we can truly say, and then they will respect us. They will listen to us. If Prof goes somewhere today, they will listen to him. If my dear sir goes somewhere today, he'll be listening. The entrepreneur is, for my own understanding, the entrepreneur is somebody who starts small and grows. So it doesn't matter. The days of small beginnings, it doesn't matter. Well, for government and the risk, first of all, you must diversify your portfolio. Anybody who is relying just on government, or who decides to set up an entrepreneurship with government in mind, has made a mistake ab initio. The foundation is faulty. So you need, I think, a diversity of portfolio would help. And of course, if you are well respected, government listens. You'll be surprised. And if you have that product, small though it may be, that they need, you have an edge. You have an edge. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I will come back to you, but you know, it's a very interesting track we're opening up here, and Bashanro is in a position to respond to that. You know, this thought about how accountants are perceived not to be entrepreneurial, too fixed on counting the bills to be able to see a broad picture. One of the things I used to inflict on my MBA classes, as Mr. Demola is the cultures of management. There are several cultures of management. One of the cultures of management is called an engineering culture. And accountants typically fit into an engineering culture. But the engineering culture is a culture in which the players are more loyal to their professional body than to their organization. That is, the engineer is more loyal to what he is taught in engineering school about safety, for example, than the interest of his organization. At least that's the stereotype. Accountants are usually more loyal to ICANN than to their company. So they count the bill according to how ICANN says count it. Rather than what will make, I tell you, in my industry days, I used to joke that the finance guy is German and the production guy is German. When the production guy talks, I can tell you how many seconds will elapse from the mouth closing and the accountant, the finance guy's mouth opening, and he will attack him. Because the production guy is thinking quality, the accounting guy is thinking costs, and you forget they both work for the same company. After a while, they will turn to German and begin to pound the table and go, Scheiße. I will then start speaking Igbo. and everybody will wake up. So, what is it about the nature of accounting training, accounting profession that leads to that stereotyping, that therefore leads to the view that accountants are not typically imaginative enough to be entrepreneurs, which we are seeing an exception of here, and we're trying to break that stereotype because we have an example here that that's not necessarily the case.
First of all, I would like to apologize for being late. On the other hand, I suspect that part is pursuing a secret agenda because when they launched these concerned professionals, and he looked behind him, he didn't see Chief EZEH, he didn't see J.K. Randall, and he didn't see any chartered accountants. Since then, he has been waiting to get his pound of flesh. Let me confess that Chief EZEH and I share one thing in common. Both of us have been chartered accountants for 50 years, I think. And contrary to the thinkers that accountants should become entrepreneurs, nothing can be further from the truth. Because in my own case, my own principal at that time was Ronald Leach. And he said to me, look, anybody can do figures, but the fundamental role of the chartered accountant is to be the custodian of public trust and the conscience of the nation. We are not meant to be entrepreneurs. Our role is limited to being the conscience of the nation and custodian of public trust. We are now being dragged into an area for which we have neither the training nor in the inclination, and sometimes the role falls on us. The reason I say so is that I just saw a headline, I think it was the Punch, that said, in Zamfara State, bandits now send invoices to local government councils and say we want 20 million, otherwise we'll attack you. Yeah, to say the demand.
They must have accountants working for them.
Well, maybe. But you should compare that with a flashback to 50 years ago. Chief EZEH was in Ebony House, and I think was chief accountant of John Holt. Just across the road, I was at Ben Pitmawick. We didn't have any issues. It was inconceivable that corruption or invoice inflation, inflating the invoice, or cheating the public, absolutely no. And we, to the best of my knowledge, confined our role to be the custodian of public trust and the conscience of the nation. He's here. He never offered me any bribe. Did I ever ask you for any bribe? There was none to give. But we are now living in a nation where the abnormal has become the normal. And yesterday, a young man came to see me, and I kept telling him, look, I need to write some notes because I'm going to be at this occasion. And he said, look, forget about that. You people are the wasted generation, and you will ruin the country. And I was aghast. Me, what have I done? I've not done anything. And he proceeded to list all the companies that were managed by Nigerians of our own generation, and all of them, without exception, are in ruins. You can take a drive from the airport, all those companies that we used to audit, each and every one of them has collapsed. They are now where they've been taken over by Pentecostal churches, and it is a real tragedy. And in the process, we have forfeited the future of Nigeria and the next generation. All we have done is to pile on debts upon debts. If some of you know the true story of Nigeria's external debt, really, Dr. Kalu is here. You will weep, because at one point we didn't even know who our creditors were or the denominations. In fact, most of those external debts we are talking about, I'm talking about Paris Club debt or London debt, they were private sector debts that were surreptitiously and mischievously, through documentary frauds, passed on to the government, and the government to today they're talking about Paris Club reform. And also look at the whole country littered with abandoned projects. Everywhere. Take the Royal Basin Authority, Niger Basin Authority, even between even the power sector. How can you want to be an entrepreneur when there's no power?
Yeah, that's precisely why we are engaged in this. You know, I was saying earlier that there has been a collapse of culture in Nigeria. And part of the consequence of this collapse of culture is the state that we are in. But prime in all of this is that we're not going to get anywhere until we begin to produce as a country. How do we create an appropriate context for production? We can go back to all the collapse and all of that. And if we had a way of having serious public conversation, fortunately, we don't have public conversation in Nigeria. You get abuses across, and so people don't learn anything. We will see a number of things that have contributed to where we are: policy choices, weak institutions, and so on and so forth. How do we ensure that we don't walk that path again? This is a legacy that we want to transmit to the next generation. How do we ensure that it does not happen again? That Nigeria is savable? And on that note, let me come back. We'll come back to you. Come back to this side.
Just
Yes.
1 second.
Yeah.
On a lighter note, I've been hoping to avoid Mrs. Ademola because there is a dispute between me and her husband as to who should be the legitimate president of St. Gregory's College Old Boys Association. I went to King's College, but I think that we owe it to the president. So this is a matter for the Supreme Court.
Well, I want to join that issue myself because I have been formally accepted as an old boy of St. Gregory's College, even though I spent 3 days there. Yeah. So, Tony, coming back to Chijoke, we have a real challenge in our environment. We need to create a generation of people who think produce, produce, produce. But we have seen public culture develop an entitlement mentality. Nigerians have a sense of entitlement. I am so and so, I'm entitled to this. But years ago, and I like to make this point and give Fala Adiola credit. Fala Adiola said in a conversation many years ago in Working Credit that he would first employ a Nigerian who was a third class, who was educated in Europe or the US, before he would employ one who was a first class, educated in Nigeria. It's not because that one is smarter, but the third class in Nigeria might be smarter than the first class. But that person has lived in a culture that understands work, that understands input, output. I get rewarded for this effort, this result. But the entitlement mindset in our country, the person who leaves the university, because they have a certain degree, they feel entitled to certain things. How do we create an entrepreneurship culture in an entitlement environment?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I belong to the school of half full, not half empty. So you see a clear pattern in my contributions today. Bear with me. Um, I strongly feel that yes, there is a generation of industries and businesses that have either through genuine economic hardship or mismanagement have gone belly up. But it is in this same economy that we have rebased, and for the first time, the new industries, the new Nigerian economy is accounting for a lion's share of the growth, and every day and every year increasing its own contribution to the gross domestic product. So, are some of those corporate debts, are they natural and evolutionary in nature? Is their time up? Or did some entitlement minded people hasten them into an early grave so that they can fleece them and they walk away? That's a discussion maybe for another day. In my half full state of mind, um, we see Nigerian banks focusing very tightly and sharply. And I think again, I'm not an advert person for the BOI, but I think the BOI has done great work in this area, focusing on the entertainment industry. And they're not giving me any money, and I'm not giving me any loan yet. But it's important, which is part of why I'm here today, because this provides a platform to tell the good stories, so that we encourage each other and we focus our energy more and more on the areas where we can gain and we can produce. I think I picked that up today, where we can produce. So we've seen the BOI do so much. We've seen world-class theater productions tour the world. under the sponsorship of the BOI. We've seen incredible musical talents take their rightful place on the global stage. So we've had some negativity in the past, but we've also seen a regulatory environment that has introduced the BVN. And BVNs now are attached to not just individuals in their personal capacity, but to directors of corporates as well. So it is expected that that era of misbehavior will be slightly tempered because now we have a digital record keeping system where identification of individuals who, either in their personal capacity or corporate capacity, have done one or two things. And then, of course, we now have the CRMS, the credit risk management system, that keeps close tabs on who does what when it comes to funding and repaying. So, in a nutshell, I think, yes, we've lost some ground in some areas, but I think there are also areas where we're making major strides. And the work before us all as entrepreneurs, as financiers, as accountants, is to put all our energy into reviving what can be revived out of what has been lost and energizing the new areas in the economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, just piggybacking on the point that Mr. Lugochukwu was making here about the fact that there are good stories to tell. One of the great stories of the Nigerian experience is that the sectors that have boomed the most are the sectors in which we didn't have any serious support for until they began to emerge on their own, and that we can sell culture and all of that. But how do we get people who have been so professionally well prepared, like accountants, bring the experience they have garnered from working with so many industries? Some of the richest people in terms of knowledge of what has happened in many sectors are people who have been auditing these people. So they've seen the problems. And how do we get them to take all of that experience and translate that into venturing appetite to become the ones that drive this move of Nigeria? And it's particularly important because, you see, in my view, the problem of Nigeria is that we focus on revenues. Revenues flowing from crude oil, revenues, and we don't manage to think production. How do we get people who have seen all of this to be able to look at taking those intelligence, if you want to call it intelligence, that they've garnered to become venturers, as we see in today's honoree going forward?
Thank you, Pat. I think my senior, my past president, has said something. It's only in Nigeria that we are jack of all trades. When we go out, why Fola says he would prefer a third class person. In fact, there are some people who do not even bother to go to beyond secondary school in UK and abroad, and they are just content with what they want to do, and they do them very well, and they are reimbursed very well. They don't try to venture into another field. The problem here is, he has said it. One, what is an accountant's role? Yes, we see all of these things because we are there. We see it from the beginning. Like I always tell people, accountants can paint a picture of a company. You see it from the scratch to the end, and you can tell the story by these figures. But are you an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is a different ball game, and it doesn't have to be a chartered accountant or a medical doctor, whatever. What an accountant is supposed to do is to provide you with the backbone, the financial information for you to be able to proceed further. And the only way you can do this is if the person you are talking to is willing to pay for your service. I did a little bit of practice before I joined the institute. And some people say, look, just give me a figure. I just want to go to the bank. And I said, no, I will not do that. Because you will not value. Yeah, you tell me you give me 10,000 naira. And that is not why I can't do that because I know you fail. One of my friends did it. And he said, no, it's just, and I gave it to him and he went to the bank. The next day he called me and said, the bank turned it down. I said, why? He said, the man asked him, if you are making so much money, why are you coming to look for a loan? I said, you see what I told you? You want a robust picture. And you didn't tell me you were going to go to your bank as well. I would have told you. He plotted your cash flow and found that there was no point in time where you needed money. And you are coming to him to say you need money to finance a venture. So these are the type of advice that an accountant can relay out there. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't want information. We have friends that we say, oh, we have gone for medical checkup. I say, no, I don't want to know what's wrong with me. I don't want to go for medical checkup. But you're not feeling fine. That is what we do in Nigeria. And even doctors will tell you that. Even they themselves don't want to go for medical checkup. So nobody wants to find out what is there. Then secondly, the providers of these funds, also how readily are they willing to insist that you have a professional take control of that financial records that is being submitted to you before you give out that money. I remember when the banks, federal government forced the banks to set aside money for small and medium. I was surprised when I know there was some, yes, there is this lady, Mo Abudu, she used to have a training outfit. And she was telling us then that, look, when she makes a turnover of about 3 million or 5 million, then she says she has made it. And she will go abroad and shut down the place. And then she now was introduced to this thing and they called her and said, look, you are going to surrender 90% of your business. So what? No, I'm not going to do that. He said, if you want this, we're going to surrender it. And we're going to collapse the board, we're going to bring in people, and we're going to make sure you don't sign the check all alone. But what you will get is more than the 5 million that is your gross turnover. Because here the board can bring in 30 million naira business here and there and so on. And at the end of the day, I think that is why she is what she is today. She has gone through so many things. So if you have information, if you allow them to give it, and our system, like I said, does not appreciate what the accountants is doing. You go to the tax office, all you need to do is configure a few and they give you tax. And at the end of the day, what you will eventually pay, because the tax people will come back someday to do tax audit, and they will still tax you, like what is happening today. Fowler is going back to look at your accounts and say over 3 billion has passed through your account and you have not paid tax. Come and pay about 100 million, 200 million. So eventually taxation will catch up with you. But you need to prepare your accounts, and it might be cheaper for you to do that. The accountant is not necessarily an entrepreneur, but even venturing into practice is an entrepreneurial thing, because not everybody can go into the practice of auditing. You see the big firms and you say, oh, Akito and Deloitte and so on, they are good. But what of the small one? They are also very relevant. And you need to know your focus and your market. You will not be a one-man firm and going to be struggling to do the audit of a first bank.
You see, he's suffering from the engineering culture.
So what we are saying here is that the accountant, yes, has all this, but individually, and we have had so many accountants that have ventured. Mr. IJEWERE is a farmer today. He will tell you he's a farmer.
That's precisely the point
yes.
we're trying to make.
So, but not all of us can do that. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, thank you very much. I think that these points are... I'd like to take some comments, questions from the floor, but I'd like to begin by giving Waheed a chance to say a thing or two. He has been accused of many things. Defend yourself.
Congratulations, Papa, Grandpa, for your on your birthday. and my big uncle, Passion J.K. Rando, and then of course my brother, Pado Tomi, for putting this together. And my sister, she's been talking a lot about the bank of industry. Just yesterday, we had our annual general meeting, and Nigerians, over a period of 18 years, were able to turn around a moribund national DFI into a globally rated institution. For instance, 2001, when Pitman audited us, you remember, sir, we had a loss position of 950 million. And 2018, we are talking about 36 billion. We grew our total assets from 3 billion in 2001 to over 1 trillion last year, and many other indices. And these have impacted all Nigerian entrepreneurs. Last time of the program, we showed more than 10 entrepreneurs who benefited from the bank, Nigerians. And that will also happen on channels tonight. So that speaks to what she is saying, that we've never been short of funds in this country when it comes to, we've always adopted the supply side solution, forgetting about the demand side, which is the absorptive capacity of the entrepreneurs. What can our entrepreneurs do with the resources that are available? During the structural adjustment program, Dr. Palu is here. World Bank gave Nigeria $270 million US. It was called the SME Apex. Dr. Ramsey Mowo was Director of Multilateral at Ministry of Finance at that time. I was in NTA and I covered, so I know. Nigerians could not come up with potentially bankable proposals to utilize the $270 million US. And because we are paying commitment fees on that, we had to return half of the money to the World Bank. So, and that's the story. At the Bank of Industry, we have a 5-year development plan, strategic plan. We earmarked 320 billion for SMEs. I was ED SME, I retired only last month. We've not been able to disburse up to 50% of that because potentially bank proposals are not there. We don't want to throw money out. Like I mentioned earlier, in 2001, when the total asset was about 3 billion, the NPL ratio was 70.6%. Non-performing loans ratio in 2001. But in the last 3, 4, 5 years, this has been reduced to single digits. And that's why today, the Bank of Industry is the best rated bank in this country, owned by Nigeria and managed by Nigerians. That can be cross-checked. Fitch, AA rating. Moody's, AA rating. Augusto, AA rating. And this was done by Nigerians. Now, that speaks to the quality of our risk assets. And the quality of our risk assets depends on your deal flow generation. Who do you lend to? Because that will determine the health of what the accountants come up with at the end of the day, the balance sheet and whatever it is. Because it's only what you can measure that you can manage. And the accountants, I work closely with accountants in the period in which I work with the bank. And they helped us to get to where we are today. From KPMG, Pitmawick to Deloitte. Complying with international financial reporting standards. Those are some of the things accountants do in helping you to manage your organization better in terms of corporate governance. Because at the end of the day, everything is reduced to figures. So you can't blame the accountants. Now, back to the issue of why don't we have good demand for the financial resources available? That's the issue of capacity. It's true we have a huge country, highly populated, but a huge population can be an asset or reliability. If you have good capacity, if they are well educated, if they are well trained, if they have the right attitude, if they have the right values, then they will be productive. But where the huge percentage are not well educated, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the right attitude, and they don't have the right value, they'll be unproductive and they'll be a liability. So there is a gap, like he said, between the funds available and those who should use the funds. Some of the solutions we came up with at the Bank of Industry was that at the level of youth unemployment, we realized that was an area we have the biggest challenge. We went into collaboration with the NYSC Directorate, and we came up with the Graduate Entrepreneurship Fund, whereby we conduct capacity building programs for NYSC potential beneficiaries of that fund. We make sure that you are exposed to about 5 days of training before we give you the money. So what should come first, the capacity or the capital? So capacity, you need to build capacity. And in doing so, we came up with about 12 of the best entrepreneurship development centers in Nigeria, including the ADC of the Pan-Atlantic University, the Faith Foundation established by Kufola Adiola, Leap Africa, and many of them like that. So and we use the NYSC training facilities across the country. We do this for 5 days, and before we make the money available. And a lot of them have been able to make very good use of the money. We also came up with the YES scheme, Youth Entrepreneurship Support Program, where we say, look, before you can get the money, we need to train you. So we need to replicate this across the country. The Bank of Industry cannot, as a single institution, undertake such a responsibility. He mentioned SBA in the US. Not even going to the US. Go to Malaysia, go to Singapore, go to Thailand. They have in Brazil. They have capacity building institutions. So we need to do more of that in Nigeria. Build the capacity of our people, prepare our people for funding. Money is, the world is awash with money. What investors want are potentially bankable proposals. Now, after training them, there's another issue which we have realized. The corporates, for instance, in making proper use of the money, because we want the money to return, because that's why the bank can be viable and be sustainable if the money does not return. Now, when they go out, an entrepreneur cannot operate in the air. He needs to operate on the land, for instance. He needs a CFO. How does he get that? He uses copper. Because that's what he needs to come to me with to say, this land belongs to me. Each copper cannot get a CFO or governor's consent. There are vagaries in the environment. There are power challenges, infrastructure, roads. Use copper cannot begin to dig borehole or provide a road to his factory. So we need stop gaps. And that's why you have industrial parks. In other parts of the world, without humility that I've been able to visit, what they've done is that they come up with industrial parks. Let us have industrial parks in each local government in Nigeria, so that when we train our youths, before we give them the money, we're ensured that they will operate in an environment where there'll be water, where there'll be electricity, where there'll be security, where there'll be roads, so that the viability potential will be higher. And when that is higher, the probability of lenders or equity investors making money available to them will also become higher. And to the overall interest of everybody, it's a holistic thing. It's not something that financial institutions alone can do. Other parts of the world where MSMEs have survived, it's a holistic thing. You come up with an ecosystem where all hands must be on deck. So those who want to give back to society should help us build industrial parks across the country. Partner with the BOI to establish funds like Dangote Foundation did. We're able to lend in collaboration with Dangote at single digit, 5%, including traders. Because he said he started his life as a trader. So to generate demand, effective demand, you need to support traders as well, particularly made in Nigeria products, not imported products. So there is a lot that can be said, and we'll continue the discussion later.
Thank you. Thank you, Wade. Anyway, I want to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Kalu, Idika Kalu. The rumor was that KIK ran away. Have we seen him? Has he come back? Into diaspora. Okay, I'll take some comments, questions. Very brief, please introduce yourself. At the very back there, yes.
My name is Akowundu Wachuku. I'm from Digital Organics in Lekki. I have a very simple question. What kind of accountants do we have, or what kind of accounting system do we have in this country called Nigeria? And we have systematically been rated the most corrupt country in the world.
We'll ask Bashar to take around to deal with that when the time comes. That's your punishment for challenging me. But not yet. Okay, let's take the next question.
Good afternoon, members of the high table and those of us on the higher table. I'm glad to be here. This is the first time attending the CVL function. My name is IKECHI, Department of Business Administration, Olabisi Onabanjo University. I'm also from Ibuku, by the way. Now, they've all said it all. The issue of values, the issue of people being interested, the issue of people going out to search for knowledge. I'll go a little bit local. For the past 5 years or so, I've been telling my town people that we cannot be talking about death levy for those who have died, burials, and whatever. That most of us who are businessmen must acquire more knowledge so as to face the challenges of a changing environment. And like one of you had said, people don't feel like paying for knowledge. That's part of the problem we have. But I'm glad about the position taken by the banker, the executive banker on High Table. He said that things are not all that bad. And Olagunju has always said that the money is there. What we need to do, the challenges of all those of us who are a little bit advantaged, is to create that capacity so that those who need the money can get the money. It may be an informal thing, it may be a formal thing, but I thank the Center for Value and Leadership for what they are doing, and I believe that with this kind of value generation and recreation, things will only continue to look up and look better. Thank you very much.
My name is Dr. Pascal Ewohime, retired director NDIC. Since I retired, I've ventured into a number of businesses. Now, the issue is that all of us are concerned about the Nigerian economy, that we need to grow it. We're also concerned about the need for entrepreneurship and to encourage young people to go and do something with their hands so that they can also produce and the economy will grow. Now, he didn't make reference to the fact that the financials, the banks and the rest of them, that they look at who do you lend to. And I asked the question, why should it be who you lend to rather than which business do you need to finance? Why am I saying so? You find out that the silo mentality of Nigerians, everybody wants to do it is so, is the reason why we're not progressing. Now, you can now begin to think about partnering, banks partnering with individuals with good initiatives, business initiatives. They look at it, they advise on how to improve on it, they become bankable, and then they can finance it. And they will be part of that process of ensuring that the business survives. Now, the problem is trust. So the critical question, therefore, is how do we build trust relationship in our culture? It's like in our environment. And I just share this example. We operate a school. And with my PhD in education, I left the University of Benin around 1989 to join the NDIS as a senior lecturer. I'm an educationist, and I've been involved in training. And I've attended not less than 20 business schools all over the world, including Harvard, Wharton, all of them. But look at it, we set up a school. And we know that the environment in which we operate, they just cannot provide the school fees that's required, even given the quality of the school somewhere around the world. But the problem we have is that they need busing. We cannot afford new bus. Apply to a bank. The bank say, look, the bus we saw is about 9 million naira. Then, a new bus will be probably 20 million naira. Now, the bank said you pay 20%. And I look at it, the overall turnover of the school cannot do that even in a term. So we remain where we are. But we need a bus to grow the business. So my challenge therefore, why can't the bank sit with us, look at what we are doing, look at our plan for expanding the business, look at the requirements, including the bus, and then the bank can come in. So these are some of the challenges I believe the young people who are just beginning to start the business will face.
Amabiageli Wobi, a business development services provider. And I want to make a comment on an assertion we have. The banks have the money, we have potential entrepreneurs, but they are not able to have access to the money. And I want to say that we have a missing gap between having an idea of what to do and how to run the business effectively. So the potential entrepreneurs need information on the business idea. They need to understand the marketing plan of what they want to do. They need to run that business on paper first before convincing the banker that the business is going to be viable. So they need support from maybe from the government like the BOI is doing, so that they will understand that even for you to run a business, you need to understand the regulatory requirements of that particular business, because if you don't, it might be the one that will kill the business, because you have to be sure that it's something you can do, something you can live with, and that you are able to provide it. So we have products all over the world that some countries have used to equip their entrepreneurs so that they are able to access the loan because they are capable. Because you have to have a business plan. The banker looks at it, understands that it's viable, and is convinced that you are not just cooking it, because you will know. So we need people to help.
Yes.
Individuals, organizations, the government
Since
to help.
thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Since I recognize that there are quite a number of academics and people who teach business around here, I will actually suggest a book written by Ragaram Rajan and Luigi Zingales. It's titled "Saving Capitalism from the Capitalists," and it deals with the fundamentals of institutions and venturing, and why some economies produce entrepreneurs more than others tend to do. Dr. Chizie, your 30 seconds.
Chief EZEH, congratulations. Now, I think that's being an entrepreneur in this, an entrepreneur in Nigeria is just a species. And that's my first take on the matter. You can't be an entrepreneur in an environment where you have all sorts of instability. The environment is not predictable, macroeconomic policies are not stable, prices are not stable, you have gaps in infrastructure, you have values, you have issues with values that adds to the business. How then do you be an entrepreneur? I listened to Chijioke talk about venture capitalist. That's venture. Is to go into a business that doesn't have a track record. Now you have businesses with track record and you're not getting funding. I accept the fact that easily we tend to accuse the banks of being reluctant, to give us funds. But sometimes, the problems come from the business people not being able to package, have a proposal, have the capacity, to be able to attract funding. So I think that again, Chief EZEH, congratulations. Have your day in the sun, and see you at the tennis section later. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I know we have plenty that we can talk about, but time is not our best friend. I would actually like to have you make a comment on on the subject matter of this before we get to the other parts of the program. Okay. Especially because, as an accountant, you prove that you are not a bean counter. And then this Bashonro, who has not paid for the trouble he's looked for.
Yeah, thank you very much, and welcome all of you. Well, with Bashon, he's always very controversial. He's an entrepreneur that doesn't accept that he's an entrepreneur. He has a consultancy of his own, and not everybody can go and set up a consultancy. You have to be prepared to take risks, which is what entrepreneurship is about. You have to be prepared to make the sacrifice, knowing that you can make a profit or a loss. And he has been doing that for a long time. I think the major thing about entrepreneurship in Nigeria is that it faces all the problems that corporate Nigeria faces. You can't be a good entrepreneur without facing the problems of power, problems of water, problems of multiple regulations that government brings up, and the fact that government policies are very inconsistent. They come up today with a policy that you go and move the empire around, and another government comes and says this does not exist. Of course, that does not mean that we should not venture out. We will continue to venture, we will continue to take risks. We will continue to do things regardless of what government is in power. That is why sometimes it's the will of the people, your ability to come up with alternatives, your readiness to confront all the policies that government is making that will keep you in good state. Now, one of the things that happens to our people is when you're in government, you think you can relax and forget about hard work, you forget about loyalty, you forget about planning, you forget about commitment, and then suddenly you're nearing retirement. And you think this is the time to venture to go and become an entrepreneur. It doesn't work. Certain things you do by habit. Punctuality is a habit you cultivate over the years. You can't say because I'm working for somebody, I can do whatever I like, and then tomorrow when you start your own business, you think it can be punctual. It cannot happen. Wherever you are as a leader, there are certain qualities you must have. Commitment, hard work, planning. These are things that you have to grow up with. It's not something you wake up and find that you have it. So all I can say is entrepreneurship is in fact akin to Nigerian life. Most Nigerian families are used to the entrepreneurial life. I know, I can tell you that my people are used to going out, even when they have nothing. They venture out, go to other towns, go to places, and start doing business. Almost doing business, starting from nothing. And why do they succeed? Without reading it in books, they have a vision of what they want to do. They know where they are going and are prepared to suffer in the interim to achieve their objective. They haven't said it out in books, but it's right there in our heads. All we need to do is get them to be more organized, get them to keep their books straight, and not to think that turnover is equal to profit, and then start spending it. So I think with a little bit of help from the government, the Nigerian businesses will grow. The government that seems to attack this question of unemployment and what they do, but I think that thinking that what they will do is give you trader money or give you end power. And then you ask yourself, how many people will this actually employ? How many people will it actually empower? They should be facing the more substantial things of saying, we want this country to grow, this is where we want this country to be, this is the infrastructure we need to drive this growth. And this infrastructure you provide is good for the big corporates, it's big for the small ones, it's good for the entrepreneurs. And this is the only way we can achieve real growth. The simplest thing of the first thing is power. Think of power. Think about billions of dollars we have spent for power. And think of the fact that every government says we have made an improvement. We have made an improvement. We are not talking of we have provided enough power to ensure growth in the state. We've been talking about 3,000 megawatts of power. For how long? Right now, we probably need 50,000, right? And the government will come and pat themselves on the back for providing 1,000 additional megawatts. Meanwhile, the population is growing. More industries are coming. More entrepreneurs are leaving school and starting. So we really have to get our acts together and empower everybody. Thank you very much.
I think we owe it a duty to those accountants, chartered accountants in particular, who have transformed themselves into mega entrepreneurs. And I have in mind people like late Chief Olu Aboderin, who founded Punch, which today is still a mega success story. 30 years after he died, he was a very comfortable chartered accountant. And also, believe it or not, one of the most entrepreneurial chartered accountants was none other than Chief MK Abiola, because
So you have answered, you've have won.
almost, we're not there yet. And of course, you have to acknowledge people like Fola Adiola, who is the chartered accountant, as well as Oba Otudeko and many others. But also, we should acknowledge those who were not accountants, and yet their mastery of accountancy was exceptional. You needed to sit next to someone like Salui Odumegu Ojukwu when he was president of Nigerian Stock Exchange, or late Chief Udutola, or even and also Chief Dr. Chris Abibi. None of them had, and of course Chief Ugoju, none of them had any accountancy background. But if you presented the accounts before then, you'll be amazed at how sharp their intuitive knowledge of all these issues were. And so you have to give them credit. But to go back to the core of the question, namely, how did we come to become, did Nigeria degenerate to being listed as a corrupt nation? Or as the Prime Minister of Britain put it, an exceptionally or irredeemably corrupt, fantastically corrupt nation. First of all, there were no penalties for being corrupt. In fact, you had a president of Nigeria who said stealing is not corruption, and he has never refuted that statement. Secondly, fortunately, there are some admirals in our midst, in the British Army, in the British Navy. If you committed any act of corruption while at sea, the admiral was at liberty to dump you into the sea. And secondly, and very, very importantly, the role model changed. Because people like, unknown to people like Chief, he was a mentor. He was a role model for all those years. Because if I remember rightly, during the Civil War, he was away in East Africa, came back and started, as the accountant, chief financial controller, chief accountant. And to the best of my knowledge, he never wavered or ventured to look for employment anywhere else. Stability. He was not a risk taker. He was a manager before eventually migrating to become an entrepreneur. But now, we have a situation where the Auditor General of Nigeria has been on television, on radio, in newspapers, lamenting that since 1999, nobody has bothered to respond to queries raised in his audit report. We are now, that's 20 years afterwards. That is the reality we are dealing with. So, how can you not expect corruption to thrive?
They say he's wasting his time, eh?
Yeah, they say he's wasting his time. Okay. And so also,
But you see, you accountants, you always inviting me to come and speak at ICANN meetings, and I always tell you that you are the problem.
No, yeah, we admit.
Because the government accountants, I think the Eastern region, wants an Asaba, and they were about government listing. I said, look, how can you be talking? No governor can take one kobo without your knowing. You all know what is going on. And they couldn't reply.
You're right.
Anyway.
You're right. Don't forget that as we speak, the financial system in Nigeria has virtually broken down. Nobody needs to account for anything. But, it's a tragedy, and it's going to take a major effort to fix it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have had a very round of conversation, but it should not stop here. This is conversation that can continue wherever we go, because it is critical to whether or not we move forward as a nation. I hope that we take it to heart, and there are platforms that we can continue this engagement. If Jide is ready, we'll just move to the next item and dim the lights a little bit and meet and truly greet the honoree.
My name, as you have just said, is Christopher IKECHI EZEH. I'm from Anambra State, precisely from Ibuku town.
As managing director of John Holt plc, he superintended many major successes of the company. These included the establishment of several new businesses for the group, such as Yamaha Manufacturing Nigeria Limited, Ogbemudia Farms, which was acquired and modernized with a state-of-the-art processing plant, and the Al Marine Boat Factory, which recently increased its product portfolio to include military gunboats. In addition, he steered one of the first mergers and acquisitions in Nigeria when John Holt plc acquired John Holt Investments plc.
I think the first and most important thing is commitment. Whatever you're doing, you have to be totally committed to it. And of course, with commitment comes loyalty. With commitment comes hard work. With commitment comes all the various aspects of leadership that will enable an organization to thrive. That without commitment, if you're the leader, you have to plan for the organization. You must have vision. You must be able to relate with the people you're working with. You have to treat them as equals, not as just servants. You have to have a good plan for the organization, the objectives you want to achieve. And you have to be transparent in all you do. You have to select the right people to do the job, because no leader does the work alone. You can only do a good job through other people. In every organization that I work with, that commitment must be there. That hard work must be there.
I would describe him as a careful man, thoughtful, very humble, extremely charitable, always putting the needs of others before his own, and an overall good person. I know usually children say their parents are good, but he is a really good man, and we're lucky to have him as a father. Chief was MD at a time that was quite turbulent for the company. The military regimes, the changes in policies without consultation. But I think the most important thing he did for the company was to ensure that internally the structure was sound in terms of controls, in terms of operations, our ability to take advantage of opportunities as they came. And these are things that we still use today. So it's an enduring legacy that he has left for us. It's difficult to talk about someone like Chief. There are many sides to him. No one is perfect, but if anyone can come close, he does. Speaking as a son, there are a lot of examples that I was given by him, and not from what he said necessarily, but from what he did. He taught us the basic values that are taken for granted now. Values of integrity, of morality, of hard work. As a father, I think two main things you can give your children. Number one, you give them a good education, and not just going to the right schools or studying the right things, but what they learn at home, the examples they get from the parents. As a son, obviously, most of those examples will come from my father, right? The other thing is to leave them with a good name. With those two things, the main hindrances to progress, to prosperity are removed, and he was able to deliver. He demonstrated what it means to be a good husband. We're coming up to the 4th year of the anniversary of my mom's death, and throughout her life, he set a good example for us, especially the sons, on how to treat our wives, how to treat women. I'll give an example. I think it was, I don't remember the year, I was about 13 or 14 at the time. I don't remember what we were talking about, but the discussion veered towards my mother. It was just the both of us. And he said to me, your mother is the most important person in this family. That even though I bring in most of the money, she manages the home. Now, at that age, you can imagine how it begins to frame the kind of person I would grow into.
Well, it's not extraordinary for an accountant to found a university or to found other enterprises. You know, the old thinking about accountants, people thought they were nothing but bean counters. You know, all they have to do is count figures and go ahead. They're very miserly, you know, that type of thing. But that is all in the past. The modern accountant is far away from that thinking. You know, accountants are very well trained now. I've been exposed to different universities and educational institutions. I've passed through some of them myself. I've worked in industry, and I know the problems that the industry have. Just to mention a bit, I was one of the founders of Lagos Business School, which became Pan-Atlantic University. And of course, I have worked as the chairman of EZEH Business School. You know, education has been one of my top priorities in whatever I'm doing. As an employer also, I've seen the problems that graduates have in entering into the workplace. They are not very well equipped with the practical aspects of working in industry. Most of them are just very high on theory and very low on practical things. In those days, interviewing students for employment and going through, I could say, is their difficulties. The difficulties of exposure, the difficulties of knowing what industry is about. I decided that probably founding a university would be a good thing for industry, because then we can get them to interact, get the students at an early stage to interact with industry, to know what they're going to face when they get out of school, and to prepare them for those challenges. That was the main reason why Christopher University was founded.
Ugumba is one of the most quiet and respected gentlemen I have come across. I really want to talk about Ugumba from the family side, from the home side, from him being a husband, a father.
Rose EZEH, I call her Rose, was a very close friend of mine, even though she was a little older than myself. But we got along very well. We used to live in the same building. You know, we had a flat they had a flat. We, the friends of the late wife, we say a big thank you to him because we saw the way he treated our friend Rose EZEH when she was down, when she was ill. She did, in our eyes, in our views, what so many Nigerian men wouldn't do. IK would spend so much time with the wife in a time of need. I mean, we so much appreciated that you could find a typical Nigerian man behave in such a way. Because I was close to them, whenever I was going out to the United States, to New York, I stopped by when Rose was in London, in the hospital, going in and out of it. I'll stop by just to see her and to say hello to her. Ukumba will be in the hospital all day, sitting by her side. Tell me how many Nigerian men could do that. Tell me how many. I'm not saying he's a saint. He's probably not. But what the way he took our friend, what he did to her, how he took care of her in our time of need, made us to give him kudos. Till today, we respect him. We, the friends of Rose EZEH, respect him, appreciate him, say a big thank you for what he did for our friends.
On retirement in 1997, he was appointed Deputy Chairman of John Holt plc, a position he held until 2001 when he was appointed Chairman, a position he still holds. Chief EZEH is also the Chairman of Lenders Nigeria Limited and IJEWERE Microfinance Bank Limited. He sits on the boards of John Holt & Company, Liverpool UK Limited, and Critical Hope Nigeria Limited. He has also had the privilege of sitting on the boards of numerous companies and sociocultural organizations, always seeking new ways to add value. These include Fidelity Bank plc as Chairman, Bentworth Finance Limited, now Merchant Bank, Nepad Business Group, Nigeria Youth Trust, Plateau Confectionery Limited, Nigeria-Japan Association as President, Nigeria-British Chamber of Commerce, and Indibo Lagos as President.
Okay, Chief EZEH was Chairman of the Board of Directors of Fidelity Bank for over 10 years, during which period I was Company Secretary and Legal Advisor. And in that capacity, I had the privilege of working very closely with him. Chief EZEH was our chairman at an interesting time in the banking industry, and he did an excellent job in steering the ship up until when he left. When he joined the bank, we had barely 24 branches, but by the time he was leaving, we had almost 230 branches. He was chairman at the outset as a private company, but he took the company public from only about 8 billion shares. We ended up with 28 billion by the time that he was leaving. On the profit front, when he joined the bank, we were hovering around 1.5 billion, but by the time he left, it was almost 12 billion. Our deposits rose during this period to almost 800 billion, whereby we were just a fraction of that when he joined it. I could go on, but I think the numbers are in the public domain. And he contributed in no small measure to what is Fidelity Bank plc today. And one of the most important parts of professionalism I learned under Chief EZEH was punctuality. He comes for every meeting 1 hour, exactly 1 hour. In fact, at the beginning, we were a bit surprised, but 1 hour on the dot before every meeting he arrives. And I came to understand that it's much more than the timing. His punctuality has many elements to it, including mutual respect, the people who you have an engagement with, and reliability, and so on. And I learned from Chief EZEH what the strategic importance of calmness in business decision making. You're always level-headed, always cool-headed, always listening to all sides to be sure that when decisions are taken, they are in the interest of all stakeholders.
We've got the type of training that means that you can fit into most things. An accountant can fit into so many jobs. And that was how, fortunately, I got to the positions I got in the corporate world through hard work, through loyalty, through having faith in what you're doing, through working with others, through learning the system about planning, about budgeting, about all these things that help a business to grow. You have to know where the business is going. You have to have vision. You have to know where you're taking the business to. And taking the business, so it means also taking the people who are working with you to it. So you have to have that vision, you have to know the objectives, you have to plan, you have to be transparent.
This may not be known, but it's also chairman of Ibuku Microfinance Bank. It is one of the 9 largest microfinance banks in Nigeria. You may be surprised that this bank has continued to pay dividends year in, year out, even when major commercial banks are not paying. The return on investment is about 30% per annum. We mobilize so much funds from that place that we are not able to find enough borrowers. Billions we have now in treasury bill. This has been possible because of where this financial group has run the bank as chairman. I must say that what you are doing now, identifying people like this, showcasing them, so that younger people will know that there are better ways to succeed.
Chief Dr. Christopher IKECHI is an exceptional human being. He has contributed in no small measure in this country, both in his personal life and his public life. He has touched many lives. He's a mentor. He has been a mentor to several successful people in this country, including myself. He's one of the few people I look up to because of the integrity, because of the way he has lived his life. In humility, he's exceptional. He's somebody that if we have 50% of such people in Nigeria, I tell you honestly, Nigeria will be much better than it is today.
With thoughts on an enduring legacy, this chairman of the ESUD Business Council established Christopher University, Mowe, a university sitting on over 100 hectares of land, which was licensed by the Nigerian Universities Commission in 2015. Ladies and gentlemen, with a standing ovation, please welcome Dr. Christopher EZEH.
If Modestus and Co. are ready, we'll just walk over to that place, cut the cake, and pop some bubbly, and then maybe one or two things can be said after that. On behalf of CVL, Chief Oibo, can you please, as a past honoree, come and present this to Chief EZEH on behalf of CVL.
Award of Excellence to an exceptional leader in recognition of your outstanding contributions in redefining accountancy in Nigeria. Presented at the 48th CVL Leader Without Title Sector Leadership Tribute Colloquium in honor of Chief Dr. Christopher IKECHI EZEH, MFR, at 76.
Thank you very much. And then the cake, to cut the cake, I hand over to Dr. Kalu Idika Kalu.
Well, we've had a very rich day. We've harvested so many ideas. You could ask, how come it took so long? Obviously, it's not a matter of age. Maybe you say Pat and the others will have called up Chief Eze a lot earlier. But I'm sure they did it just at the right time. The man is accomplished, and it's not a matter of time. It's a matter of entrepreneurship, accountantship, or whatever. I know in my old school when I studied economics, the first thing for people to say was, what economics is not, is accounting. Anybody looking you from the outside will marvel. Some of these things not here. Will marvel that you still have such quality events taking place here. Overall, it looks so deadly dull, depending on where your vantage point is. So I have to really thank Pat for keeping it going, Pat and his group. And of course, when you have personalities like Chief Eze, who have come to know for quite some years, not as closely as we should, but in time with each other, we never think, we hardly see every once in a while. There's that kind of communication. So there's no way I got to town and had to rush to get there. So I need to apologize for coming late to him personally. It's one of my favorite persons. He's contributed so much. I'm supposed to moderate. I see this cake with a tie. Okay, so Chief, you step forward. Corporate tie and there's silver scarf in the pocket, so on. All of these are indicating high quality. So the count of 3. The count of 3, not 76. Unless we do it by decades. 1, 2, and 3. Oh, he's a jolly good fellow. Oh, he's a jolly good fellow. And so say all of us. And so say all of us. He's a jolly good fellow. Oh, he's a jolly good fellow. Oh, he's a jolly good fellow. So say all of us. Hooray! Hooray! Hooray!
This is the Minister of Ramadan fasting. So it's against my policy, but as there in the Holy Book, only the first bottle is haram.
Let me invite Professor F.N. Ndubisi, Vice Chancellor of Christopher University, to please come forward.
I'm Professor F.N. Ndubisi, the Vice Chancellor of Christopher University. I know that this outfit is an outfit that is very dear to the heart of
the honoree today. We want to make this presentation. It's our Chancellor. So I'm presenting this on behalf of the staff and the management of the Christopher University.
Thank you very much. This is very much unexpected. Thank you.
The honoree will also like to invite those of us who can make it to his house for a lunch for today. The honoree would like to invite those of us who will make it to his house at IKECHI for lunch immediately after the program. Thank you.
This is really to appreciate everybody present for finding the time to come for this occasion. My joy knows no bounds when I look round and see all of you here. You are all very important to me. I thank you all for coming. Let me say that the award is not really for me alone. This honor, which has been bestowed on me today, has only been possible because of your various inputs into my life. You have all added value to my life. But let me start from the family to say that the family has done a lot to make this possible. My late wife should have credit for my being here today. Whatever I have achieved in life has been possible because of the total and unequivocal support of my family, and I thank them very much. I look around and see my friends from far and wide, from all parts of Nigeria. Even some had to come back early from overseas trips in order to be here. I feel very humbled by your presence here. I thank you very much. I have for special mention also the people of Ibuku who are here present in very large numbers. They have stood by me for decades now, through thick and thin, through the good times and the not so good times. The President General is here. Please, Basil, stand up and get thank you very much. And I tell you, these good people of Ibuku have stood by me in everything I had to do in Ibuku. In fact, everything I have done in life, through my education, through my working period, through this retirement. They have been unrelenting and uncompromising in their attitude and support to me. I thank them very much. For CVL, they have done a good job. I believe in their philosophy. I believe that the youth should be trained. I believe that they should be shown the way. And when we say the future belongs to the youth, we should not set hurdles in their way. We should make it easy for them to lead this country in the future. And we can't lead a country, we can't lead the youth and say they will lead a country without providing adequate education, without showing them what to do, without providing employment. And we have a country where we're told now that by 2020, 35% of the youth will be unemployed. This is completely unacceptable. And I hope the government is trying to find ways of making sure that this does not actually happen. Ladies and gentlemen, there is so much to say, so little time. I can tell you that you have brought me so much happiness, so much joy that I will have to remember this day for the rest of my life. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We would like to thank all of you for attending today's program. We thank the honoree for the time for the interview and for providing all the material for this program. We also thank Ibuku Microfinance Bank for supporting this program. We thank Jokaro Nigerian Limited for supporting this program. We thank John Hood for supporting this program. We thank Committee of Friends of the honoree that came together to also support this program. There are also people who, through their adverts, Fidelity Bank, Anambra State Women Association, Christopher University Moe, also all of them contributed in making this occasion a success. We, as we said earlier, we proceed from here to the honorees place at Igoi for lunch. We thank also the media, the panelists. We thank you for coming and for making useful contribution to the progress of this country. We thank Christopher University, the students that came from there. We thank our media once again. May God bless all of you as you go. Thank you.